I just had a discussion with a peer who just came back from China. So I'm from the Philippines and they're from China. They've never been to China, however, because they grew up in Canada. And this was their first visit. They went to Chengdu as well as surrounding areas, and it was amazing. Like a lot of us Asians, when we first go to Asia, it's gonna sound weird because what do you mean like an Asian not from Asia? Like if you're Asian, you know what I'm talking about. You know about the Asian diaspora. When you first step out and you arrive in the land, it's like sunlight essentially, right? Where it's like enveloping you, but it's also warming you from the inside. It's like something is happening, and it's very weird. It's a different country. It's a strange country. People talk different languages than what you're used to, but it also is okay. It feels okay. It feels like you are where you're supposed to be, or at least a part of you is where you're supposed to be. And a lot of the questions also start popping up over time as you are there and as you're reflecting about everything that is happening. Like one, yes, it's very chaotic, but also it's okay. But two, you also start to notice that when you grow up in the Western world, as she did, as many Asians do, is that you don't know anything about Asia. And that is because the Western world is withholding a lot of the information, on purpose, mind you, because the Western world exports its garbage to places like China or the Philippines or Indonesia or so. And they also have their sweatshops in places like the Philippines or Vietnam or China again. So if they were actually honest, they would look very bad. Because you as a person of the diaspora would probably not be very grateful to the Western world. You would in fact be rightfully angry. And when Westerners usually talk about traveling to Asia, it's usually about Japan, or sometimes they talk about Korea nowadays, South Korea. But when they mention other places in Asia, it usually is in a negative way or in a very weird, you know, the places in the internet, how they talk about Asia, in that type of. And it's not just, mind you, the media, it's also the politicians and it's people on the street as well. People you grew up with even. It's not very good the way we are presented essentially. And when you go to Asia, you get to see so many things that you never heard about before. So many wonders. All of this nature she was talking about. She liked the nature she saw in China. She liked the tea. She liked the fashion, the cosplays, all of this stuff. And this is like the same thing like when you see the Philippines. You see things that you didn't know about. Yesterday, somebody mentioned to me that their Filipino loved one saw me write in Baybayin and talk about Baybayin, but they never knew about this because they grew up in England. Because if you grow up in the Western world, you grow up completely cut off from Asia, cut off from all of the culture, from our traditional instruments, garments, everything else. And Asia is being limited to like certain things. Like you constantly hear about in the Western media, for example, Tencent. This is what China is. It's being reduced to Tencent. And then of course, you know, whatever Westerners say about China. Philippines, for example, is being reduced to Jollibee. Most people of the Philippine diaspora, they only know Jollibee. They don't know anything about the Philippines, but they know Jollibee, which is the most Western type of product the Philippines has to offer. And so she got to see all of this and she was so amazed. She was also talking about how like normally when she goes to travel and then comes back home, home is the best place. But there, it felt like that was home too. She was at home and people were accepting her the way she was. And a lot of the other peers were like surprised because they were talking about like stuff like LGBT stuff in China. Wait, are they accepting of LGBT stuff? And the thing is, if you've read like traditional Chinese fiction or history of China, you gotta notice that there's a lot of LGBT people in history, not just in China, mind you. If you look at the Philippines, like a pati, for example, is gender fluid. That is a deity who's gender fluid. And the stuff regarding, you know, the more Christian conservative way of looking at LGBT people was introduced with the colonial period. That was the West. And the ongoing exploitation of Asians is also from the West. And it makes sense why the West doesn't want to talk about Asia in a good way, because they would look very bad and very backwards. Anyway, so she had a great time in Asia. Anyway, have a good day. Bye.